Welcome back, everybody, to 605 Speaks. I have turned my microphone down because I know that I am a screamer and a loud talker and sometimes hard to hear and understand on my videos. So we'll see if this makes it a little bit better. You will notice my Bob is Love t-shirt is still unchanged because I'm still excited, and Happy Song is the song of the day, every day, all the time. So I'm gonna fangirl until I get them all on here as well. Today I'm going to be talking to one of my friends who lives in the heart of the Sioux Falls area of the city. And I'm going to be asking her cool stories about her childhood, which is not Sioux Falls based, but mostly because she gives a fun description of what her father considers good ways to spend family vacation time. And I think it aligns with my personal belief system too. So I am excited to bring on my friend and my mentor in all things cardiac. We're going to add that too. Welcome, Chrissy.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't like to be a mentor in anything. I am not an example.
I just now thought, so I'm super excited because we're getting close to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame time and Janitor Bob, and I got my shirt in the mail, so I'm like, I got to promote that. But I guess if I had to play walkout music for my guests for you, it would be Staying Alive.
Yeah.
Or oh gosh, there's 2 or 3 songs you guys used.
Another One Bites the Dust.
Another One
Although
Bites
we do, steer away from that traditionally.
Right.
The latest one, because not a lot of people know the Bee Gees, which is a tragedy. Honestly, we could do a whole show on that. But Baby Shark.
The dude, I can't even.
Baby shark, do 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 do. Baby shark, do 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 do. Yep. So think about that while you're saving lives.
Yes, and the what do the Bee Gees? Is it Queen?
Queen does Another One Bites the Dust. Yeah.
The Bee Gees, Queen, and Baby Shark have in common the American Heart Association.
Yep.
Because you teach people hands-only CPR on a regular basis. And that's our goal, right? Is to follow the beat.
Yep, exactly. It's super simple. Two steps. Step 1, call 911. Step 2, push hard and fast in the middle of the chest to the beat of Baby Shark, Staying Alive, your favorite Taylor Swift song. Just pick one.
There we go. All right. I've only ever had to do CPR once on someone, and I don't know if I made it better or worse for the fire department by the time they got there. Like, they still had somebody to work on, is the best I can say. But I have been in the presence of ER staff, nursing staff doing what I call real CPR on a person, and it's bone breaking. And I've always thought, boy, I don't know if I could ever be brave enough to use what they use in real critical life-saving technique. But I could do enough to keep somebody going until the hot guys from ladder truck number 1 get there.
Well, and that's really, that's kind of the point, right? Like, it's to do something, do something, do anything, because frankly, the reality is, if someone's in sudden cardiac arrest, if their heart has stopped, if you don't do anything, they will die.
Right.
Period. End of story. If you do something, you increase their chance of survival by 2 or even 3 times.
Right.
And so by stepping in, and the other thing that, we always kind of try to tell people is that when you're doing CPR, you're not doing it for the heart. You're doing it for the brain.
Right.
Because what we're doing, we're circulating that oxygenated blood around the body and keeping the brain function alive.
Right.
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 And so once the paramedics, the hot guys from fire engine number 1, once they get there, they'll use an AED, they'll use everything in their bag of tricks. But most importantly, they'll transport you via ambulance to the hospital.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know or understand that an ambulance isn't just a ride. Like, it's not an expensive limousine.
Right.
And so once you're inside that unit, you've got medical professionals that are attending to you and taking care of you. And so that's the other reason why we say it's so important to call 911 and to activate that system.
Right.
Because if you, let's say you feel like you're having a heart attack and you say, well, I'm just going to drive myself to the hospital. You've now not only put yourself in danger, but everyone else on the road.
Everybody in between here and there.
Right.
Yep.
And you have delayed your care.
Right.
Because when that ambulance gets there, they start treating you right away.
Yep.
If you're having a heart attack, they've got a 12 lead EKG in the back of that ambulance. They're going to put it on you. They'll know exactly what's going on, know exactly how to treat you, and they'll bypass the line in the emergency room, right? Like there's no waiting in line when you arrive at an ambulance.
They're going to call ahead and give those details and be ready for you and have and be able to have the people that need to respond to you be waiting in the bay when they pull in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another big part of what we do in the state of South Dakota is we work hard to make sure that no matter where you are in the state, like obviously we're in Sioux Falls,
right?
And the average response time is about 6 minutes, no matter where you are in the city,
right?
But if you're in, let's say, Kimball, South Dakota,
home of the best popcorn ball in the state.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Sidebar, yeah. But if you call 911 in Kimball, the folks that are going to be responding, they're volunteers.
Right.
Like they're leaving their job. They're going to the fire station. They get in the rig and they come out to you. Right. So that's a little bit of a delay. Now they get on scene and they realize, oh, you're having a heart attack because again, they have the 12 lead. They can do those diagnostics. But now they've got to transport you. So they can either, if the weather activate the helicopter or a fixed wing airplane to transfer you to Sioux Falls. They can get you to the nearest critical access hospital.
Right.
But your medical care starts in the back of that vehicle.
Exactly.
And that's really an important thing. No matter where you live in the state of South Dakota, you have an opportunity to survive because we have that incredible team of professionals in place, and we're working on making that system even better.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's talk about how did you come to South Dakota? Because I feel like you were not born and raised here. Is that right?
That is correct. I always tell people I'm from Northeast Iowa. I graduated from high school in Waterloo, Iowa, which.
So are you what is the big debate in Iowa? Cyclones versus Hawkeyes? Which are you?
Yeah, I am a Cyclone.
And what's the difference between the two?
They're two different schools. So Iowa State University, which is the obviously the much better school. It is the land grant university, science, engineering, technology, agriculture. A lot like SDSU here, except, obviously better. And then there's the University of Iowa, which those are the Hawkeyes. And that is more of the liberal arts, med school, law school university. There's a third public university, the University of Northern Iowa, but those are the two big ones.
Okay. So, and then what made you decide to go from what I always consider the land of corn? Iowa, I just think corn. Sometimes I think Palmer Candy Company and Bing. A lot of times I think Sioux City is still under construction. God dang it.
It's actually done. I just came through there yesterday and it's fantastic. The best thing you can say about Sioux City is you can get through town in just a hot minute now.
In a blink now. Yes. Yes. But what made you decide to pursue life and career in Sioux Falls? And South Dakota in general, but
yeah.
How come Sioux Falls? Why not Rutland?
Well, so I always tell people I moved here for the duck hunting.
Okay.
And the reason why, my ex-husband was a veterinarian, or is a veterinarian, and passionate outdoorsman and passionate hunter. And we were living in Brainerd, Minnesota. And for 2 years in a row, he did not draw his out-of-state waterfowl license. And he said, that's it. I cannot not duck hunt in South Dakota. So we have to move there. And we looked at Aberdeen, obviously right smack dab in the middle of duck hunting country. And we also looked at Sioux Falls and kind of thought that the job opportunities for me might be better in Sioux Falls. And so we made the move here. And so I just have never left. And when we moved here, ironically, at first I kept my job in Brainerd. And so I commuted for about 2 years back and forth to Brainerd. I'd go up once a month and do what I needed to do. And otherwise I worked here in my home office, but got tired of doing that. And so I made the jump in my career, and I started working at the Empire Mall, which is where you and I met, was
right.
when I was working there. So
I don't know if it still is, but I believe at that time it for sure was still the number one tourist destination in the state.
Yeah. I mean, when you count traffic counts, us versus Mount Rushmore. Yeah. We had more.
Chrissy is frozen, or I am frozen. We'll give her a minute to return. But yes, the Empire Mall in Sioux Falls, on the famous 41st Street, where the traffic is the highest traffic count in the state of South Dakota. Are you back?
I'm back. I don't know. That was weird. What happened?
Did I freeze too?
Yeah.
Oh, we were both frozen.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see in the end which one of us was still talking on the recording. But I was just saying that, that 41st and Louise, it's the highest traffic count in the state. Is that still to this day? So
yeah.
And where you grew up, where you spent most of your growing up years, did you live in a city as large as Sioux Falls?
No. So my dad, which we'll get to, my dad worked in city government for most of my life, and then worked in or for city government. And so we moved around a little bit when I was a kid. So I was actually born in Davenport. We lived in Oskaloosa. We lived in Newton, Iowa. And then we moved to Waterloo, and that's where I spent most of my childhood. So Waterloo at that time was a town of about 65,000.
The only thing I know about, in general, most of those towns is that Davenport has a burlesque pinup festival.
It does not surprise me. Davenport is a happening place, I tell you.
There you go. And so then you came here and you landed in our largest urban area for the state. And you're very community involved. I mean, even in every career aspect that I've known you of, from, like you said, you were the queen of the mall. I don't know where they kept your throne, but I know there was one there.
There was. When Santa wasn't using it, it was mine.
Yes. Sure. And then you had to drag it out for him once a year. Our mall does have a really great Santa. And then I've lost Chrissy completely. She'll come back.
There I am.
There you are.
I can hear you. That's weird.
Is it your minion? Is he chewing on a cord?
No, he's out cold.
Oh, darn it. I was hoping it was the minion. But you've always been very involved in career or community-oriented career things. And you've been involved politically and in community. I guess I would call it activism, even though the word activism has such connotations right now, but community organizer would be a good word for you, I think.
Yeah, sometimes, some days.
Yeah. Being involved in things. What of all those things that you've been involved in community-wide in Sioux Falls, what do you think more people who've lived our whole lives here are overlooking that we could be involved in?
Gosh, that is a great question. I've been involved in community stuff, and that was just kind of a value that was instilled in me by my parents ever since I was a kid. And, basically their mantra is, it's your responsibility to make this world a better place. That's why you're here. And, whatever that.
That's why when your dad on vacations would make you tour water treatment plants.
Yeah, that was a whole other reason, but yeah. That was just for his fun. That had nothing to do with our fun, or, well, I guess water treatment is important, but yeah, no. And so it's always kind of like, whatever it is, pick something that is important to you and find a way to make an impact. And so, right now there's a lot of things that I do professionally. Obviously, I'm super involved in our Medicaid expansion efforts here in the state of South Dakota, working on getting that passed on the November ballot. So spending a lot of time on that, but obviously I get paid to do it, so it's fun too. I volunteer I'm on the board for the Co-op Natural Foods here in Sioux Falls, because I believe that everyone should have access to safe, healthy, local foods. And so that's something that's super important to me. And then, in the past, one of the organizations that I was really involved in was, and it's called Experience Sioux Falls now, but it's the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Mm-hmm. And, when we think about what drives our economy here locally, and let's face it, healthy economy means healthy people, healthy schools. Right. What drives our economy here, one of the biggest industries outside of medical, is tourism.
Right.
And so I don't think a lot of people that live here in Sioux Falls really understand or take advantage of the incredible visitor industry that we have here. Right. We know we've got some great attractions. We've got the pavilion. Downtown is just absolutely phenomenal. You mentioned the Empire Mall, obviously big tourist attraction, but we have so many amenities around us. I don't know that we actually fully get that.
Right. When people talk about, and I ask people when they live in different towns, and I do this with them, what are the amenities that you feel like your area lacks? And I mean, in Sioux Falls, it used to be people would say, well, we don't have a Dave & Buster's. And I would be like, yeah, that's great, which now we have one. But yeah, it's also not necessarily a quality of life. I guess it's a quality of entertainment life and things like that, and social life. But compared to towns where people say, we don't have a grocery store anymore, and it's like, we have a lot of grocery stores.
We have yet, like
we're developing food deserts in our city.
Yeah.
In the area I grew up in my childhood home, the people in my neighborhood, in the shadow of a meat packing plant that is the center of attention on a national level, there are people that can't get fresh produce where I grew up, and that bothers me.
Well, that's the neighborhood I live in. I live in the Hayward neighborhood over here on the west side of Sioux Falls, and we are a low access, low income neighborhood, meaning that the colloquial term is food desert, but but yeah, like if you live in my neighborhood, the only option within walking distance for most of my neighbors is Dollar General.
Right.
There are no healthy food options in there, or virtually none. And, when we look at this city, that's one area where I do think we need to pay attention, and developers need to pay attention, especially, when we looked at the corner of Marion and 12th Street here, not that long ago, on what would be the northeast corner of that intersection, there was, a parcel of land that came up for sale. And now it's, we were so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity. There could be a grocery store there. And what we got is a holiday station, another gas station. Right. So, what we continue to look at is, and the city is doing a good job, they've got a new grant program where they're encouraging businesses to go out and look for these opportunities. Could we find someone who would do a pop-up grocery store inside that holiday station, offering fresh fruits and vegetables? could we identify a location where we could have a pop-up farmers market at least once a week?
Right.
But then you get into the next step of this, right? Like anybody who shops the farmers markets in town locally, it's a little bit more expensive to buy your produce there.
Right.
If you are someone who uses SNAP benefits to purchase your groceries, those dollars don't go as far at a farmer's market. So one of the things that we need to kind of look at is, A, can we get our farmers markets to accept SNAP and EBT as a form of payment?
It's even almost odd to say, do they go as far? Sometimes they don't go at all because the vendors don't accept it.
Yep. And then could we look at programs like Double Up Food Bucks, which is a program through the USDA, which basically means that for every dollar you spend, it's multiplied in two. So literally double up. So if you buy a tomato for $1, you can buy 2 tomatoes for $1.
Right. And the vendor
gets that money.
In full. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, looking at those kinds of unique things to kind of start addressing some of these disparities and the inequities that we see. We are a very wealthy community. We're a very giving community, but there are still a lot of need. I mean, a little over 8% of our population lives in poverty.
I feel like Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County overall has examples of extreme wealth. And not even just extreme because we're South Dakota and a lot of us are poor. I think there's an extreme disparity. There's extreme wealth. I mean, people that are on the Forbes list. And then there's extreme poverty. And whether or not you're wealthy or whether or not you're poor, no one should be obligated to own a car for food. Like, just because you're born is why you should get food. Like, food is a human right. It's not a privilege.
Right. Well, and somebody was just sharing some statistics with me out of, so basically the living wage study for the state. And they were looking at Hand County, which is, kind of out west.
Right.
And he was like, I just was curious. And so I looked like, what's the living wage in Hand County? Meaning this is what you need to pay for housing and food and gas, your basic needs, $59,000 a year. Now, and that's for a household that is one adult and one child. Okay. So single mom living in Hand County with one child, $59,000 a year to be able to afford to live.
Right.
The median income is so far below that, it's not even funny.
But do you know it? Like, if I guess it, would you know if I was even close?
Well, my guess, I have to look it up, but my guess is about 35K.
I was just going to say 35.
Yeah, that's kind of the median income statewide in a lot of our smaller rural areas. And so when you look at that disparity and you think, well, how on earth are people making it? The question is, they're not.
Right. Right.
And, we have a system in this state where we value our freedom. We value, independence. We don't like to pay taxes. We don't like big government. But by the same token, we have these people that they're not making it.
Right.
And they're not getting by. And we've got to start looking at some legitimate solutions.
Exactly.
Because it's just not, it's not okay.
No, it's not. It's not. Because, whenever anyone says it's all about our freedom you have the freedom to make it as good as you want to make it. That's great. But the bars that poverty can put around people are harder to break through than prison walls sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and when people say that, I always think, God, you're coming from and this is me getting very political, but that's like, you're coming from a place of privilege. Like for me, I was not raised in riches and wealth, but we never went hungry. We always had a roof over our heads. Both my parents worked very hard to provide for us. I have one sister, so, your typical family of four. I was able to go to college. I worked my butt off to pay off my student loans. I did all the things, right? So it's really easy for me to say, well, if you work hard enough, you can get it and you can do those things. But I never had those barriers and those bars that you're talking about. I'm very privileged. And it's really important that if you are a person of privilege, to acknowledge that and to understand that your truth and your story, my story is not a bootstrap story. I'm sorry. I had a ton of privileges and advantages that a lot of people don't have. And you have to acknowledge that. And when you make those ignorant statements and say, well, you can do it if you try. Well, yeah, you can, but it's just like starting a race 20 minutes after the fastest runner starts.
Right.
It's not fair.
Right.
And that's where we talk about equity. We got to find a way.
Equity is far more important than equality.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have equity if you really want justice. And that's the other thing is I think there's been on a community level in Sioux Falls anyway. I feel like the tide is turning, that there are more, as far as from the perspective of women, there are far more of us that are becoming aware that you can be in pretty rough shape in South Dakota and still fall on the plus side of privilege. And anybody that doesn't, it's bad. I mean, it's rougher than rough. And there's a lot of people barely hanging on, and of all different demographics, all different color, creed, ethnicity, religion, everything like that. I think, though, that there's been a turning point where more of the people that realize, wait a minute, I am on the plus side of privilege, they're putting their face and their name to it now. We used to just not want to rock the boat too much because we could see that ravine and we didn't want to get kicked into it. And now I think there's a lot more people that are like, no, I'm going to put my face to this and talk about it and be vocal and be there. And I think that's really an important thing right now, is not only helping give a leg up to others in our community, but being willing to be the squeaky wheel that people that are working 3 jobs and a swing shift, they don't have a squeak left in them to give.
Right.
And I think that I felt like this summer I'm seeing more, there's a little more squeaking, and I hope that means some wheels turning.
Yeah. And I hate to be the skeptic, because I do have hope. I do have hope that tide is turning, but I also look at all of these organizations that are hiring, DE&I professionals and, starting to really kind of use that diversity, equity, and inclusion buzzwords. Right.
Right.
And I keep thinking, are you doing this because it's the cool thing to do, because it's the buzzword right now in business? Right. Are you actually making those investments? It's kind of, I think about it in terms of greenwashing, right? Like, we're all going to be more planetary conscious. We're going to, put a recycle symbol on some things. Are we actually, in hiring folks to do these jobs, are we actually committing to the kinds of changes, not just within our companies and organizations, but in our community? Right. So that when we have these large corporations and, the large donors that, every time we have a Forward Sioux Falls campaign that comes through this town with the effort of raising the economic tide in our community, are those huge investors taking a step back and saying to the powers that be, wait a minute, we really have to examine these policies and really examine what we're doing here and make sure that we're doing the right things.
Right. And that we didn't just give somebody that job so that job title could be on our website, because now the search engines will find us.
Exactly. And that's my concern, is I really want to see, like, let's put your money where your mouth is on this stuff. Let's actually do this. Right. Because if you're just hiring somebody to check a box and say, well, we did it, then that's not progress. We're not doing anything. We're not fixing it.
I heard an interesting thing, that no matter who you are or what you've done, more than likely for sure the average person, but even some people that go above and beyond, that you will be forgotten in 3 generations. Your
Mm.
name won't mean anything 3 generations from now. And I find that to be true. People don't know who the Bee Gees are, like um that's true. And I'm not saying that we all need to strive to be remembered in 3 generations, but to do things or create things that will still be remembered and working in 3 generations. And like, probably because it's this year has been, it's been a more political set of years in my lifetime than I've ever known before. But I often hear people hearkening back and remembering George Mickelson. And I thought, the things he believed in and said and did lasted more than 3 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And even though there are people in political power in our state right now that have actively worked to dismantle what he did, as far as progress in our state, and yet the people that believe in that, he evokes a response that's still more powerful than anything they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope to find more people in our communities statewide that realize there are some things that you can do and you can believe in that are more than 3 generations.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are, those are the things that hopefully the American Heart Association is working on. And hopefully, we're all looking at that. And that statistic really is a hard one for me, because, when we think about legacy, we think about our children or grandchildren. Right. I'm childless. I do not have children. And so does that mean that I have zero chance at a legacy? And I think,
girl, I've met you.
I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that if all you're doing to make the world a better place is procreating, let's go back to the drawing board here, because we have got to look further than beyond our own nuclear families.
Right.
We've got to look further than beyond our own neighborhoods, beyond the people that look just like us, drive the same cars that we do, etc.
Right.
We have to look beyond that. And I think that, it's so funny that you brought up Mickelson, because I was just on Monday, I had a quick meeting with a gentleman, and we were talking about, a project that we're trying to get off the ground and working on. And he said, we were so close. Mickelson had this whole thing and he was going to do it. And we had this plan in place and we had all the dominoes lined up, and all that was left was just to pull the trigger and make the announcement. And when he died, his successor scrapped the project. And that had the potential to save lives, countless lives across this state, and make South Dakota really progressive.
Right.
We would have been a model for the rest of the nation in how we handle, this particular thing. And it just really struck me as sad.
Because that is something else to think about in anything I do. I don't want to, I would hate to be the person that was remembered for even 1 generation for having undermined a legacy like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
To have taken away from other people in my community in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about something positive.
Yeah. Okay.
I have cheese. Let's talk about cheese. Cheese. Let's talk about what are things, since you've lived here. I can go kind of on and on about changes and ways that I feel like Sioux Falls has become more pleasant to live in city. What is something that you think people that even live here don't realize that they do have access to, that makes it a more enjoyable place to be?
So, number one, our recreational trail system. The tremendous investment that we have made in that system. Oh, you got your minion. I could wake mine up, but he just looks so cute. The tremendous recreational trail system, and we're adding to it all of the time. One of Sioux Falls' biggest strengths is that when it comes to our access to physical activity facilities, resources, etc., we are so far above the national average. And I think we take that for granted, and we don't really realize, gosh, we have a lot of access,
Right.
and a lot of free access. That's
Right.
that's the other big thing. So that would be number one. The number two thing I would say is, and I'm very prejudiced here, but our downtown in the almost 20 years that I have lived in Sioux Falls is a completely different place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it has made such a transformation. And there are so many amazing businesses, shopping, dining, bars. If you're a person that goes to bars, I personally,
I've aged out, and the pandemic changed me. I'll stand in the middle of a bar and yell, "Get off my lawn." And, yeah.
I prefer the patio, but whatever. But yeah, downtown Sioux Falls just has changed tremendously and is a resource. I know everybody loves downtown, and on a beautiful summer night, you can see it. Everyone's down there. But also get off of Phillips Avenue, for crying out loud. Take a look around at there are so many cool things that are happening off Phillips.
Right.
Phillips is great. I love it. Don't write me hate letters, but the entire downtown area has got just a lot of fantastic things.
Yeah. Phillips was definitely the beginning, but there's more coming and changing, and it needs the support. It needs the foot traffic. If you want Maine to develop, you've got to go down Maine. If you want 8th and Railroad to develop, you've got to go down 8th Street.
Well, that's another thing I would say that the city and the area has done well, and we obviously have a lot of improvement to do, but I know that we're working on it, is making Sioux Falls friendly for walkers and bikers, like people who want to use alternative forms of transportation. I love being able to park my car in one location and walk everywhere that I want to go downtown.
Right.
And I think we're going to see a lot more of that throughout the city. As our planners are kind of looking at how can we make Sioux Falls a much more walkable and bikeable community.
Right. Because our public transportation in Sioux Falls sucks.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not. And and they know it's not great. I mean, they know. But it's not great because nobody uses it.
Our employees of our public transportation don't suck.
No, they're fantastic people, and they work very hard.
Our Sioux Falls Metro system drivers and things like that, they are all great, and all of those things are great. But the way we use routes and the timing and things like that, we're not easily accessible. Even though I hear a lot of people say that they feel like we're still an affordable public transportation, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not a good plan. So we grew and developed into a shape that doesn't fit the metric anymore. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of a chicken and egg situation, because the routes and everything are bad because nobody rides it, and nobody rides it because the routes and everything are bad. Mm-hmm. And so, it's kind of, and I'm not a transportation expert, obviously. But there's got to be a better way. And I know they're experimenting with some things, and they're working on it. Right. They're trying.
Right. If you have friends or family come and visit from out of town, where do you like to take them for? What's your favorite food? What's your favorite pub and grub, and your favorite fancy dinner in Sioux Falls?
Oh God. I used to love Minerva's. That was always number one. But you have to take out a second mortgage to get the salad bar now, basically. It's so expensive. So I actually am really enjoying lately for fancy. Obviously, Parker's always on the list, but Ode to Food and Drinks. I'm telling you right now, they do some amazing food. So highly recommend that. I mean, if we're talking about just hanging out and having a few drinks or, grabbing an app, Blarney Stone downtown is a lot of fun. I am still, and I know I'm going to, get made fun of here, but I love Granite City. And I will go and sit at the bar at Granite City, get some spin dip or a flatbread or
they are leaders in the spin dip.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I'm going to tell you right now, their salads are great. Like, yeah. So I like Granite City. I know it's a chain, but and I have to admit, I'm also a Johnny Carino's girl from time to time. I miss Spezia.
I miss Spezia.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to get some kind of a local Italian. There's a lot of restaurants that have Italian on their menu, but something that's like legit good Italian. I miss that.
Right. When you look at your professional life, as far as all the different organizations that you've worked for, and they've all been, like I said, community or health or outreach, even like with the mall, outreach to shoppers. What is something that you find all those different organizations are commonly seeking for us? That organizations in our city are saying, you know what we need to do?
That's a tough one. Because I think it's different and it changes over time. So, when I was at the mall, one of the things we were always, trying to do was recruit new businesses, recruit new things to you just get stabbed.
My cats have all their claws. My cats are farm kitties.
Recruiting new and interesting retail, recruiting new and interesting whatever. And even today I saw somebody had posted something on Facebook about we need Cheesecake Factory. And I'm like, oh, good luck with that. My focus now with what I do with the Heart Association, when we look at community needs, we need a better built environment that allows people, that basically makes the healthy choice the easy choice. Right. And whether that means that your employer has healthy vending options, your employer offers an EAP for mental health, whether your employer encourages you to go for a walk break in the middle of the day, or maybe it's the built environment in the city, more biking, more walking, all of those things. Those are the things that we really need right now in our community. And I think a big reason why is that we're overweight, present company included. We can all lose weight. Our blood pressure is out of control. We're not getting enough sleep at night. We do not eat our fruits and vegetables, and we definitely don't get enough exercise. Oh, and we also smoke and vape way too much in this, So when you take the whole, there's no way I'm ever going to convince people to stop making poor, healthy choices. I can't convince myself to stop.
Right.
I mean, I know I shouldn't be eating a pile of cheese in the afternoon, but darn it, I really love it.
Right.
So that means we have to come up with ways to make the environment more conducive to that, making the healthy choice the easy choice.
And then I think it's such a big picture thing here. I mean, looking at it from an urban perspective, and then also how do we bring that mindset to rural areas?
Yeah.
Where just having a living wage is not even an easy choice.
Yeah.
We have such a strange, we live in such a beautiful place, where so many people, again, that what's been forgotten in just a few generations, not a lot of us are growing our own vegetables and canning anymore.
Nope.
And yet we live somewhere where the land provides all of us the opportunity to do that, or all of us the opportunity to know and support people that do that. And it's still, and I am just as guilty of it, it's still easier for me to run to the store and get a Hostess snack pie than it is to go pick the apple from the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. We've let go of probably the core way of living. And it's not all just riding horses and looking like you just came from the rodeo.
Well, and I mean, you bring up a good point, because I think, I grew up, my mom still cans, they live in town now. They don't have the acreage. She doesn't have the big garden, but she still cans
Right.
when she can. But that's like one generation, right? Like, I grew up, I know how to do that stuff and could do it if I chose to. But we're not teaching our kids. Like,
Right.
they're not exposed to any of that.
Right.
So within just one generation or two generations, our kids don't. And, you go to a restaurant and look at the menu, and I mean, everybody makes, jokes about kids want to eat mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. Well, that's because that's what we give them.
Right. That's all we know how to make for them.
Right. Those are the choices. And it always dumbfounds me that, people don't even know how to cook.
Right.
And that's another thing that we do, is we call it Simple Cooking with Heart. We do like just simple cooking classes for people, and just, very easy recipes, very cheap recipes, but just not even being exposed to simple cooking techniques. They don't know how to do it.
Right.
And that's amazing. Like, that's the stuff that just dumbfounds me, is how do we get here?
And even if we reach out and we're starting to provide those to the next generation, if they live in a neighborhood where they can't get the food without having a car, like, we've put all kinds of actual physical obstacles in their way. It's funny that you mentioned EAP. It's one thing for employers to offer it. I'm almost starting to think that employers should require it, that we should all EAP at least once a month.
I think, and this is just my soapbox issue, I think that in addition to going and seeing your primary care physical provider every year, everyone should have a mental checkup at least once a year.
Yeah. And not just answer the questionnaire at your physical doctor appointment.
No, sit down for 1 hour with a licensed counselor, psychologist, therapist, whatever. Sit down for 1 hour and have that mental checkup.
Right.
Because I am a big believer in therapy. I have done it multiple times in my life. It has helped me to understand how my brain works. I have issues. Put it out there. I do. And being able to say, yeah, I go to counseling. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, and I think that's because so many people came from the idea that if you say I have issues, the issues have to be insurmountable. They have to be that you're living under threat of violence. They have to be that you're living with a chronic terminal illness. They have to be that
you're schizophrenic.
That you have a chronic illness that you yourself aren't aware of to even address, or things like that. And it doesn't. You can be, I mean, and I think the pandemic changed for so many people. We became so much more aware that we all had small stressors that became big stressors. And if we could just talk to a third party that isn't someone in our household who has their own stressors and is tired of listening to yours, like, we all need that we need to circle up and just get those things out so that they don't become a greater part of our health condition. It's
Yeah.
basically like, if someone says, I have issues, you want to say, oh, you live in America? Like,
yeah.
And welcome, as do I, those kind of things. And I think that's something that Sioux Falls definitely has started working towards in the last couple of years. I'm a huge supporter of the existence of the link and making sure that they have things to reach out. But the rest of our community needs to change their mindset where it's not just people in absolute crisis. I mean, it's great that we are building our network of crisis centers because we did not have enough for the people that are reaching crisis point. But I don't think a lot of people are self-aware of that. We're kind of all in crisis right now.
Yeah.
And
well, the other compounding problem with that, and I realize we're just basically spelling out doom of the universe. This is 1 hour of like what's wrong with everything. But
and how we could make it right if somebody would just, if people would just line up and let us tell them.
Yeah. The other problem with that, though, I have a dear friend of mine who was, experiencing, kind of a really seminal breaking point in a relationship and needed to get into counseling, needed to get in to see someone and couldn't. The waiting list just to get in to see someone, he had to wait 6 weeks for an appointment. So if you're not in immediate crisis, you are having to wait for such a long time to get help. And that's something, I mean, we need more. Right. So just putting out a plea to the universe, mental health professionals, come to Sioux Falls. We will fill your books. You will make lots of money off of us and our anxieties and stress because we've all got it. But we need you. We need more medical professionals, mental health professionals who can answer the problems for those of us who are not in immediate crisis, but just, woke up this morning in complete anxiety thinking, oh my God, where did I put my car keys last night?
Right.
Silly thing to worry about, but it's those anxieties and daily stressors that add up to us.
Right. And I would love to see more programs, especially targeted at young people for, I'm a big believer and fan of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. Mm-hmm. And that comes from living a life with chronic pain. And a lot of people with chronic pain, they get real feisty and real angry if you recommend that they get CBT because they're like, well, CBT they feel like it's people setting aside their pain or whatnot. And I'm like, no, it's definitely part of you living an adaptive lifestyle. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get your pain meds, but I'm saying you should also learn how to adapt your lifestyle. If it hurts to keep the cereal up here, put the cereal down here. And now everybody knows that all my cereal is at eye level. But I'm a big believer in CBT and how easy, and that is easy to teach and easy to learn and accessible so that we can be stronger for each other too. Because there's never going to be enough mental health professionals for all of us. And we can have a million hotlines, but sometimes it's important to be the hotline, to be the person your friend can call.
Yeah.
To say, I want to recognize in a friend, I want you to save 988 in your phone and be willing to text them and call them if you need them. But I also want you to have me on speed dial is,
yes,
teaching all of us to be available.
Yeah. But I think you hit on something that's really important there too, is that concept of building resiliency. Is that, getting to a point where you have the tools in your toolbox. So, whether it's CBT, whether it's, self-talk, whether it's, kind of those meditation, those moments of discovery that you have where you feel yourself spinning out of control and you can pull yourself back from the brink with the tools in your toolbox. But teaching people how to build that mental resiliency is so important because then not only can they take care of themselves, but to your point, you can take care of others.
Right.
And
Or at least sit with them until help gets there. You can be the hands only.
Yeah,
help.
exactly. The hands only.
Hands.
Yeah. But it's so important. And frankly, when you are able to give back and help another person, that just builds your resiliency even more. Right. Like, that's where we have to start with, that is giving people the tools and teaching them. But again, it's that once a year check-in, get in, get checked out. You get your blood pressure checked at least once a year, I hope. Why not have your brain checked too?
Right. My brain, I've recently had it checked, both mentally and physically. I do have electromagnetic scan evidence that there's one in there. There's neurons doing things.
They're firing everywhere.
They are. Well, as we're getting close to the end of our hour, you're right. It sounds like we spun this into here's all the woe and doom in the Jenny and Chrissy hour. But I think it's definitely a positive to know they're having a, like you said, resiliency, because you have the willingness to face it and talk about it and, turn the rocks over and to do it, not just for naming rights. That's because it's the right thing to do. So,
well, because we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place. And whether you're doing it to be remembered in 3 generations, or you're doing it just because
you hope 3 generations survive after you.
Well, there's that too. I mean, let's face it, we're on the brink of global catastrophe. But with that, hold on. Cute puppy to end the show.
Oh, he woke up just in time. Look at him. He's like, oh, here I am serving my purpose.
So we have cute puppies to finalize the doom and gloom for everyone.
Yes. Okay. He looks so like, what even? Oh, Mom.
Yeah. He's I don't know. He sleeps all the time.
It's interesting. Fine. The cat that jumped up here, she keeps jumping up whenever I do one of these. She's not my cat. I mean, she lives in this house, but as far as we have 3 cats and each one of them have a person, I am not that cat's person. But when she gets to be like, oh, I'm on camera, it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
You're faking.
Well,
You're faking the love for me, number 3.
I am definitely his person. But yeah.
He looks like he's just ready to go back to sleep. He's like,
put me down. I'm done. You done? Yeah.
You're
done. Oh, buddy. All right. We'll put you back in bed.
I bet he works the Zoom calls like a champ.
He does do guest star appearances from time to time, mostly by special request.
I do love in this, this project for me was born of during more isolation and quarantine time of being able to reach out and still connect with people. And we all learned how to use different platforms. Obviously I use StreamYard here, but different platforms to do these things. And I love how in the beginning we were like, shut your pets away, hide things. And now it's just like, if they jump in, your weatherman's cat can walk through and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. I think that is a big improvement towards better mental health. Some things are not that big of a deal.
Yep.
Just let it ride.
Well, we're all people, right?
Right.
And let's show a little bit of our human side from time to time.
I've been told it's still that big of a deal if I forget to get dressed for one of these things. Like if I roll in and I'm not decent, that's apparently still a big deal.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, are there can I drop an F-bomb? Like all of those things. So I was like, oh, I'm going to have to really try hard not to swear the whole time. Like not to say a swear for an hour.
I need to look up the rules on YouTube because that's ultimately where I post them. And I don't know what they would like take a video away for because I don't edit. But there's no boss. Somebody said, oh, you did such a good job. And I'm like, that's because it's for fun. And there's no boss and there's no advertisers and I can do whatever. I dropped a C word the other day.
Ooh, wait, the see you next Tuesday word?
No,
Oh, there's another C word.
there is. We'll leave the listeners to think about that. No, no, but that's that word. I did use that so that I would stay off the news recently.
Yes, that is one of the best PR tips I have ever heard.
Yes.
That was fantastic. And I actually thought about using that in an upcoming training that I'm giving.
Right. If you're being filmed or recorded by the local media and you want to make sure that they can't use any footage of you of or edit what you say, just make sure what you say is really hard to edit. To
Make
put
it as filthy as possible.
Yes. Yes. You can apologize to your grandma later.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chrissy. I'm gonna be practicing my hands only to baby shark now, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the Bee Gees.
Yeah. That's my preference too.
All right. Thank you, Chrissy. Bye,
Thank you.
Chrissy. Oh my gosh. This is so much to think about. This was such a serious discussion. I hope you're all sitting down and being serious and taking notes, and then go out and be frivolous and walk the trails. I'm a huge fan of grounding or earthing. Look that up. It basically means walking barefoot, which is something anybody can do at any level of your life. Walk barefoot, touch the earth. That is something we are lucky enough in South Dakota to be able to do anywhere, and stay in touch with it as a better way to stay in touch with yourself. But think about all these things, these opportunities that we talked about. What are the opportunities in your neighborhood to get things like a pop-up farmer's market in walking distance of your neighborhood? Like, wouldn't that be awesome? I love the big farmer's market, but I would also love to have one right in the heart of my neighborhood and get to know my neighbors and things like that. And being more aware of who in your neighborhood is transportation challenged, food challenged, literacy challenged, all those things. Those are privilege. If you can read, that's a privilege. If you can pick out what you want to eat for lunch, if you have choice without struggling for it, that's a privilege. So look around and see who in your life, those simple privileges you have, if they're lacking them, how do you make them accessible for them too? So looking forward to stuff coming up. The recovery through art, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk to somebody that's going to be working with the Transformation Project. I'm going to talk to people about SuperCon and geeking out. So if you or someone you know South Dakota wide wants to talk to me about ordinary stuff or exciting stuff or sad stuff, be the hotline. I'm here. Reach out. I want to talk to you. Have a good afternoon. Bye.